hands down the most important thing. The cliche, trust the process. It's never more real in any situation than sales. At the end of the day, you should know the numbers you need to do, the volume you need to create to hit your numbers. Of course, shit happens. And that's the biggest thing in sales. And it's tough. You can't control everything,
right?
But you can't control yourself. You can't control your process. And that's where, ultimately the best SDRs and the best sales folks have a good process.
Oh, gee, y'all new to the game.
What's going on, everybody? It's Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you motivational advice, tips, and tactics for your sales development career, your sales career, and also your entrepreneurial career. And super excited to have this guest. We got Corporate Bro on the SDR Chronicles, so you guys know this is going to be off the charts. And what we're going to talk about is a topic that we really do need to touch on is why the SDR role is the most important job you could ever have and actually the worst. So before we kind of dive into it, I want to kind of talk to you, Corporate Bro. Why are you excited about this topic? And tell us a little bit more about yourself if people don't know who you are.
Oh, man. I started as an SDR, BDR, BDC, all the different names, ADR, whatever you want to call it, sales development. And I think it's the most important role you'll ever do in your sales career. I think anybody who's really ascended the sales ranks, who's been worth much in sales, has gone through this exercise. It's kind of like, being in the service industry, being a waiter. There's some lessons that it teaches you. It gives you a really, really good foundation, and it's incredibly necessary, but it also sucks a lot at times. And so, I think it's certainly the most important aspect of sales to learn.
Yeah. So this is the first question that I don't ask people when they're like, we talk about the journey or what they're actually doing in their role. Why did you decide to actually go be an SDR out of all the things you could have done?
I wanted to develop. I wanted to go somewhere where I was going to get the skills I needed. Baptism by fire is good and all, but I wanted a formal process, and that's what it teaches you, the process. And that's hands down the most important thing. The cliche, trust the process. It's never more real in any situation than sales. At the end of the day, you should know the numbers you need to do, the volume you need to create to hit your numbers. Of course, shit happens. And that's the biggest thing in sales. And it's tough. You can't control everything,
right?
But you can't control yourself. You can't control your process. And that's where, ultimately the best SDRs and the best sales folks have a good process.
Yeah, no, I agree. They do have a process. And, even in the trainings that I do, we always talk about treating sales as a process, not an event. So tell us the time that you treated sales as an event, maybe at a cold call you weren't ready for, an email or a mistake that you made, and how did you learn from that mistake to get that process in order?
Yeah, I think early on, every call was an event. I'm sweating, I'm nervous. I'm putting so much pressure on an individual call or an individual at bat, as I like to call it, that I lost sight of the bigger picture. Every call is an opportunity to learn something or to practice something or to experiment with something. And so early on, it was just, oh God, this guy's going to hate me. I'm going to ruin his life by making this cold call. The truth is, none of these decision makers, none of these folks you're calling are going home and like sharing, the sales guy called me, really messed me up today. I can't even think right now. It never happens.
No.
It's like you're gone. As soon as they hang up on you or you're done with this conversation, it's over. And so don't put so much pressure on an individual call, an individual at bat. You got to go through a volume to, ultimately get better, to start pulling the bits and pieces of information that you need to learn so that you can start sculpting your own process there. So I would just say early on is really when I put too much weight on every individual action that I did.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I tell people the same thing that you just said is like, in 5 seconds, that person will completely forget who you are. And even sometimes you could call 2 weeks later and then they're like, oh, I'm interested. And you're like, wait, what? Like you just told me 2 weeks ago, but people forget it. And it's just not something to completely weigh yourself on. Right.
Exactly. And it's tough. And that's, the biggest part of being an SDR, being in sales is the mentality. How do you go through these ups and downs? How do you kind of, for lack of a better description, take shit in the face and move on and make that next call. So it kind of teaches you to get thick skin, but also to realize that, the world is a big place and it's not all revolving around you and that single thing that you just did.
Yeah.
Or about to do.
Yes, 100%. And that's super critical. So we talked about, hey, how do you actually bring value to the calls? Like, how do you actually get a process in place? What was your process as an SDR to get results? And then why do you believe the SDR role is a very important role and why should people need to take it more seriously?
Yeah. For me, it was about, okay, I needed to I was measured on dollars of pipeline that I was creating.
Mhm.
So I knew if I needed, $1 million in pipeline created, that it was going to take me, 10 meetings, or excuse me, 12 meetings. 8 of them would be hopefully qualified if I did my job, which in order to get 8 qualified, or 12 meetings, 8 qualified, I needed, 250 dials. I needed
Right.
250 emails. I worked it backwards, so that, you ultimately try to overshoot and get there. And again, shit happens, things fall through, unpredictable things. But if you're putting your best swing on each call, each, piece of your process, you are more likely going to win at the end of the day. So, I think for me, it was quantifying things and
Yeah.
understanding that if I simply did that exercise, if I came in prepared each day, knew what I was going to do, who I was going to call, why I was going to call them. I didn't want to just get on the phone, call someone without any, information, without any research,
Yeah.
preparation. That's incredibly important.
How would you prepare for a call? Were you going on LinkedIn? Were you just, hey, look, I'm just looking at their website real quick? Like, what was that process there?
Yeah, both. I mean, LinkedIn, that's where you can find a little bit of something to bond and rapport on, if they went to a similar school, or, there's tact involved. You can't just go in there and be like, hey man, I see you went to UGA, go Dogs. And it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
great, dude. I know you're trying to like befriend me right now. But events on the website, things they're doing from the business sense, if you feel like, hey, you guys notice you guys are expanding internationally, what we do actually helps bring companies, scales companies internationally, blah, blah, blah. You want to find some sort of connection there, why you're calling. The worst thing you can do is like spit out a script. Person's like, yeah, we're not doing any of that. We have no interest in any of that. Our company has nothing to do with that. Then
Yeah.
you just look like an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
So anywhere you can get information, Google them.
Yeah.
Website, LinkedIn, status of decision makers. A lot of people will celebrate things, on their LinkedIn. So, have it all. Don't limit yourself there.
Yeah. There's too much information out there to be like, hey, there's nothing. There's always something. You just
Right.
got to go a little bit deeper. And before we kind of hop into why it's the worst and kind of talk about the challenges there and things that you've seen, why aren't SDRs treating their role with more importance? And why are so many SDRs just going through the motions until they hit that account executive aspect? And like, what would you tell them?
Well, I think part of it is that they get burnt out. People come in really excited, sales, they can make a lot of money, but a lot of people don't actually understand what it takes to be in sales. I think sales to some folks is a dirty word, so they avoid it altogether. Some people say, wow, I can, go work with these reputable companies, Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce, big names, cool logos, but they don't understand that there is an emotional toll.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing, is kind of going through the motions. People don't take SDR seriously because a lot of them, and this is just kind of the nature of it, they don't know whether or not they want to be in sales. So people will kind of churn and burn pretty quickly, and that's just the nature of it. So I think it's tough, the same way when an account executive deals with a champion, an internal champion who's not going to buy. Sometimes people feel the same way on the other side. It's like, oh, this sales development person is trying to set up a meeting for somebody else, like the real person who's going to talk to me.
Right.
But you can bring value as an SDR. And I think a lot of SDRs feel like they don't. They treat it as I'm setting up a meeting, I'm passing them on, and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You are the first touch point of a relationship that hopefully grows into something trustworthy enough to spend money, right? Thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't take themselves seriously. And that's where it starts. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they're not taking themselves seriously, no one else is going to either.
Right.
You
Exactly.
are at the bottom of the totem pole. But this is where you learn. This is where you build up, the trust with your rep, build up trust with potential clients. It really is. It's the foundation. So I think it starts with people not taking themselves seriously.
Yeah. So how do you start taking yourself seriously? Like, is it more so, is that an internal job that a manager or leader can do? Like, because a lot of people come into the role with no self-esteem. So obviously that's not going to carry over with confidence on the phone.
Right. Well, it's what are you motivated by?
Right.
Are you motivated at the idea that you are getting better at something? Or are you motivated because you want to make, $100,000?
Right.
The $100,000 thing is very fleeting, right? So you're looking at your word, intrinsic motivation. You got to have something internal that's saying, hey, I want to understand this. I want to understand how, my own company works and scales. You want to move up the ranks, you got to understand these things. It's not just simply sell a product. There's so much more that you can learn. How does finance interact with us? How does legal interact with us? How does product interact with us? how does this interact with the clients I'm talking to?
Exactly.
The more you can understand business holistically, the better you're going to be. So are you motivated by information, getting better, learning, or are you motivated by, I want to be number one on the board, which is actually just a product of intrinsic motivation. Folks who are finding that reason that gets them up every day, those are the folks who succeed and last longer, prevent burnout, and are ultimately more successful down the line because they genuinely care about something.
Exactly. There's actually emotion, there's purpose behind it. And so curious for you, like what is your intrinsic motivation, or has it changed since you were an SDR?
I want to run a company. I want to lead a sales organization and run a company. And, a lot of CEOs, a lot of the best ones out there are good at sales. Sales is the most important skill you can learn because whether you are in sales or out of sales, you're selling an idea, you're selling yourself, you're selling a service, a product, something. So to have that skill, whether or not you stay in sales, that's totally up to you. I still think sales is the most important skill you can learn regardless of where you go.
Yep.
So my motivation has been, I want to run a company. And when I'm in sales, I get the most interaction with various departments.
Yeah.
I get to get all the touch points.
Yeah, no, I love it. That makes complete sense. So we've learned a lot of things of what to do, process, making sure that you're having self-esteem, you have your confidence. Let's talk about, why is it the worst? Why is sales development one of the worst jobs that you can have? And kind of tell us about your story, how you turned into that corporate bro, which y'all need to check it out because I told him before this, it was like, y'all know me. I do not check out that much content. I'm heads down focusing, but I checked out his content and I was dying laughing. So tell us a little more about that.
No, I appreciate it. It sucks because it's emotional as shit.
Yeah.
Some days you just have a really, really bad fucking day. You have a bad day. You first call in the morning, you're probably feeling good and you just get torn apart. And all of a sudden the entire day switches, and you're sitting in there like, is this for me? Is this what I want? Like, why am I like this? And the truth is it's not you. You caught someone at a bad time. You caught someone who's clearly got something else going on. People want to rag on sales and cold calls and so forth, but I guarantee in their company, someone is doing the exact same thing you're doing to pay for them to, to even be there. So it's the emotional side of things. When you're an SDR, you're also setting up meetings for somebody else to close business.
Yep.
You don't feel like you're building the relationship for yourself, and that's hard. For me, it was, I wanted to create, I'll never forget the first time I started at Oracle, one of the big behemoths, cutthroat sales environment. I went to go meet my rep like within the first 2 days. And the guy didn't even turn around to look at me. He was like staring at his computer. He was like, hey, how's it going? Didn't even look over his shoulder at me. And I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
And they told me, they're like, you got to kind of prove yourself before people here are going to just, say, hey man, come on down. I want to teach you everything. Like you got to show that you care. And that's a little tough. I wouldn't necessarily do that to my SDR. You want to have a good relationship, but that's where it starts. It's building that relationship with your rep. And when I was looking around at Oracle, I was like, oh my God, like this place is absurd. A lot of the things in sales are absurd. It's hilarious if you step back.
Right. 100%.
What that grind is. It's pretty funny. So that's where corporate bro started for me, was actually because I was an SDR and I was like, wow, everybody takes themselves so seriously here. What if everybody just stepped back and was like, this is what we're doing. We call people all day long who aren't expecting our calls. And we have to build a skill to become their friends. We're professional, we are relationship architects.
Yeah, 100%.
I like to use that. But yeah, I think that's where the struggle of an SDR comes. You're not setting up your own meetings. You're brand new and you're scared because you got to call people who, you know what it's like to get a cold call. It's like you hang up on them. So now I empathize with people when they cold call me. I'll always tell them, hey man, respect what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right now, not going to work for me, or we're not doing this type of, whatever it is.
Of course.
I want to give them a few seconds.
Yeah, of course.
So.
Yeah, you always want to give just the sales karma. Like you don't want to just immediately hang up on someone.
Yeah.
But there are some people out there who aren't good. So it's like
totally. And that's the problem. And when the people who aren't good make it a bad, give us all a bad name.
Yeah, exactly.
In a lot of things. And we just have the line that we walk is so much more shaky than any other profession, really. Right. Because people are already defensive when you get on the phone with them.
Yeah, they are. Because they were not expecting the call and they immediately have their guard up. And everyone knows listening, you hear the tone of their voice. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you're like, shoot, all right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, how's it going? Hey, it's Corp calling from company X. And they're like, pause, like, how's it going? And you're like, oh. They're you can tell they're so nice, but now that you're on the phone, they're like, oh God.
Exactly.
Oh God.
They saw a ghost and they're freaking out.
Yeah, exactly. But you have a few seconds to win them over, and you're not always going to do it on the first call. And you got to understand that, it is a process.
Yeah. So I kind of, you mentioned something about like the people who are doing it wrong. So there was a video out there, you guys should check it out. Corporate is mocking Grant Cardone's live calling, which if you've seen that YouTube video is like spot on. And basically it's essentially what people see as wrong in sales. And my boss, John Barrows, like does not like Grant Cardone because he thinks it's what's wrong with sales. So
yeah,
how can an SDR overcome like the worst part of the job, which is essentially always cold calling and trying to get someone's attention, and actually be more of a consultative approach than a salesperson?
Yeah. The consultative approach has always been the way it's worked for me. Is if you can offer information even for free, or recommendations, things like that, you're already bringing value, and they haven't paid anything. And for me, that was kind of the biggest was very much just talking about them and talking about their business, kind of interjecting a few of the things that I thought. My goal with my first call was always, is there a fit for us to work together?
Yeah.
That was like my close, or my upfront contract is like, at the end of this call, I think we should have enough information between the two of us to decide whether or not it makes sense to work together. And that for me was very disarming, because they're like, oh, he's not trying to sell me right now. He's not trying to push a product on me, but we're just trying to agree whether or not there's a fit for us to continue this discussion.
Yeah.
So Cardone is very pushy. And that is one of the things that I think, and there are some people that works for. There are some people in some industries where that can work. You're going to struggle if you try to be something you're not. So, one of the things that I always tell people, stop trying to fit into a mold specifically of someone else, or even somebody who's good on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Take the bits and pieces and things that resonate with you to then make your own story, kind of your own pitch, if you will. Because people use these cheesy lines and it's cringy. Like, the last thing you want to be is cringy. So if it feels right to you, that's something to adopt. So just pull bits and pieces from the folks around you who are successful.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be much more successful that way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then from you, a lot of the content that you're deriving is from those mistakes or things that are the worst of the profession. What was your favorite video to make, and why?
Oh man, favorite video to make. Probably the Westworld parody, Sales World. Because I think a lot of people, we feel like robots at times.
Yep.
We're constantly veering off our sales cycle.
Yeah.
That was one that took about 20 hours. And when we put the music into it, it was like, holy shit, this is actually really good.
Yeah.
The videos I like are the ones where I can go watch them. I'm like, I don't see me. I can see like Corporate Bro as third person.
Right. Yeah.
There are some that aren't that, where I'm like, oh, that's so bad. The truth is, I don't hit every time. I know that. Sometimes I'll put stuff out there and I know full well it's not going to be that good, or it's not the best one.
Yeah.
And people will be like, not your best. And I'm like, God, my heart, I should quit. But all of it does come out of truth. Like, that's the goal for me, is to pull some bit of truth, even if it's completely absurd, and put it in there. I want people to say, this is me. I want people to say, this is my life, or this is somebody I know. Because there is comedy in sales. We look at ourselves and take ourselves too seriously, and it is very stressful. And so for me, it was very cathartic. It was, sometimes sales is depressing. If I can make fun of this or laugh at this, it's going to be a lot healthier for me. And it just turned out other people liked it too. So it kind of spread from there. I had no intentions of like social media, influencer or anything like that. It just kind of happened. Yeah. So I guess that goes back to the intrinsic motivation. I like making stuff. My team liked the things I was making, and they just started telling people, and it kind of got big from there.
Yeah, the same exact story for me. I was in the SDR role, and I just was like, just giving out information, just documentation, kind of what I learned from Gary. He's like, you should just document. Because I asked him 2 years ago, he's like, just document your journey. Like, you just started first job out of college. I was like, all right. So that's all I was doing. And no expectation to, where I'm at today. There wasn't like, I wasn't like strategic, like, yep, this is exactly what's going to happen. It just happened because of that. And but you brought up a good point that relates directly to the SDR role, is that, hey, every single time you put out something, it's not going to be A1 material. Right. And I think everyone as an SDR needs to think about that too, is like, every call, every email you send is not going to be A1. Everyone's not going to respond to every single thing. Otherwise you wouldn't be at your job. Like,
there's no silver bullet, as much as we wish there was.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I wish every single interview and video was like the best one of all time, but it's just not going to happen. So I think everyone needs to take kind of what we talked about here and understand that it's directly relatable to the SDR role.
Right. Right. And if you can pull one piece out of any content you watch, one thing, then it's successful content.
Yeah.
You may say, oh, it took me, I had to give use 7 minutes to get to that piece, but honestly, that's still worth something.
Right.
It's when you get absolutely nothing out of it. You're sitting there like, why did I do this? It's a waste of time, and that does happen. There's just so much content out there. But when you find those that give you 1, 2, 3 pieces, you got to be like, yeah, this was worth it. This was absolutely worth it. And there's a lot of lessons that you can pull out of it. Like you said, you're just not going to hit every time. That's all it is. It's a volume. It's a process. Change, tweak things, experiment things. I'll put out content that is for me and no one else. There'll be inside jokes in there that people will not get. But for me, it's kind of, the next time I do a video like that, I've basically already established that I will do this type of thing. And people are like, oh, okay, I get why he's doing that now. You kind of have to create permission for yourself to do it. And then the next time it becomes normal. So that's one of the things for me is I'll put things out where it's like, I want to go this direction. I know it's not going to land. But the next time I do a similar video, it does land because people are now expecting it because I've now broadened the scope of things that I'll do.
Right. So you bring up a good point there because that you're gravitating towards content that you want to create. So what advice do you have for SDRs that maybe want to create their own content, personal brand standpoint, or they want to be innovative within their sales development process and their company's not letting them?
Yeah, that's tough when the company's not letting you innovate on things. Do it anyway.
Yeah.
Do it anyway. It doesn't have to be some official company thing. It can be something that you and your friends do. You got to you got to be intrinsically motivated. You got to want to do it. And the second thing is consistency.
Yeah.
I am going to post every Monday at 5 o'clock. I'm going to, whether I have something good or bad or somewhere in between, I'm going to do it. It's the same thing. You have to create a level of consistency for yourself in your role or the content you're doing, and it will get better. You'll learn something every time you do it. If you put a timestamp on yourself too, you're not going to, I already analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis. I already do that. But knowing that I have to get a video out that next week, it has to stop somewhere.
Right.
You can sit there and analyze, is this the best thing I've ever done? Oh, what if I change that? Oh, I kind of stuttered there. Oh, I slurred there. Can someone hear that? You can find a million excuses to not post something, to not do something.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Just put it out there. Give yourself a deadline, stick to it, and just get consistent. So that's the biggest thing I think is consistency, because you will get better. You force yourself to get better.
Yep, 1% better every single day, and you'll get there. And so, as we wrap up to these final questions, one I have for you is: we mentioned, hey, these are the worst things about the role, but what would you say is like the number one thing, the absolute worst about sales development?
What's the absolute worst, or what's the best?
The absolute worst, and then we can go with the absolute best.
I think the absolute worst thing about sales development is the fear and the stress component.
Yeah.
You're new. You don't know what to say. You're talking to people that you feel like you shouldn't be calling. And so the emotional side, it's staying level-headed throughout the entire process. The best salespeople, you have no idea if they're number one on the board or last on the board, regardless, and you may see them, killing it. You may hear them getting rocked, but if they're not showing it, that's who I want to work with. That's who I want to sit next to. That's who I want to be in the trenches with. So being a professional is about not letting the emotions get to you, sticking to your process, trusting it, and just not, I'll take Grant Cardone's words here, don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.
Don't be so emotional because it's happening to everyone around you. So that's the hardest part, is dealing with the emotional roller coaster of sales. The best part is when things start clicking, when things start happening for you, when you start getting into that flow state, that mojo where you feel like you can't lose. That's the highest of highs. But again, you're not walking around the office like, look at me, I'm crushing it right now. The numbers speak for themselves. Again, be a professional, take care of your stuff, take care of your business. And once you hit your stride, there really isn't a better feeling. But you also got to realize the slump is coming. It's always coming, But in the same vein, if you're in a slump, the highs are coming again too. You got to be patient and you got to be tough.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And the final question I ask every single person that comes on the show is, and you've already mentioned a couple things, so this might tie into it again, but what is the number one piece of advice that you have for SDRs as they enter into their new role?
Experiment. There isn't a perfect way to do it. Try something new on every call, or at least A/B test it. Do 20 calls one way, 20 calls another way, and look at it. Like you said, document everything. In this one, I'm going to lead with this opener. In this one, I'm going to lead with that opener. Everything else can remain the same. Just run your A/B tests when you're doing your calls or your emails. You know, you want to learn each time you're doing any single piece of your process, but obviously you need, you know, you need numbers, a certain volume to pull out those insights. But always be trying to learn something, always be trying to experiment with something, because again, there's no silver bullet. Even if one thing is working really well, try something elsewhere, you know, because eventually that one will stop working for whatever reason, you know, in the cosmic world, things just stop working. So experiment. That's the biggest thing. And don't be afraid to fail, because there is no true failure, really. You know, you may have a bad call, you may have an email that doesn't work, you may get yelled at. So what? There's a lot of people in this world.
Yep, 100%. Whoa, Corporate, thank you so much, man, for coming on the SDR Chronicles. As I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, sir.